Thanks so much, Matt. This is my first time giving a talk, and I am so happy that I get to do it in front of all you wonderful folks here at Donut. So in October 2016, the directing duo Phil Lord and Chris Miller, known for such movies as Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street, and The Lego Movie, gave a lecture at the British Academy of Film and Television Arts as part of its ongoing Screenwriters Lecture Series. In it, they discussed their creative process for screenwriting and making movies. Ultimately, they boiled one of their main points down to this. If you are open to revision and iterate enough times, you will look like you know what you are doing. More recently, I came across a different quote by Ken Koshenda, the former principal engineer of iPhone software at Apple. And he had this to say about software development. Quick iteration is the key to banging software into shape and making it great. So the fact that people from the creative industry and people from the tech industry would have such similar processes kind of jumped out at me, especially because I feel like for most of my life, these two industries have so often been perceived as kind of opposite one another, not particularly related to one another, at least not directly. So what more might we be able to learn from the fact that they have this in common? Quick backstory, I have a background in film studies and film production. I graduated from undergrad with a degree in film, and I moved out to Portland shortly afterwards. And I'm really proud to say that my film career kind of really took off from there, which is why I am now a web developer. Okay. I currently work as a software engineer at Tivix, which is a software consultancy based in San Francisco. And I'd like to talk with you all about, I'd like to talk with you all about what specifically we as developers can learn from looking at this creative process of filmmaking and film production, specifically from the standpoint of screenwriting. So I will first go over what a screenplay is, specifically a modern mainstream Hollywood film screenplay, because that's what I have the most background in. And then we'll look at one main aspect that is shared between screenwriting and coding, which is the importance of appearance. So what is a screenplay? A screenplay is, very simply put, a movie in written form. It contains all of its dialogue, scenes, characters, and descriptions for everything that happens. More importantly, however, a screenplay is a technical document. They're commonly referred to as blueprints because not only do they do the work of telling the story of the movie, but they also convey information that is extremely important when on set and in post-production. The syntax, writing, and formatting of a script is important because lots of people working on the movie, from the director to the actors, to the people on set, to the sound department, they all need to get different information from the same page as quickly as possible. I think one of the more challenging things to wrap your mind around when learning screenwriting is the fact that the screenplay is not the end goal in and of itself. It's one important step of a much larger endeavor. People aren't lining up around the block on a Thursday night. I mean, they're not really doing that anymore these days, but they're not doing that to read your script, they're doing that to watch the movie. No average person out there is going to go to a bookstore, find your script from the film and TV section, buy a copy of it, and then read it for fun, not unless you're a weirdo. So in other words, and this is definitely a generalization, screenplays are not written in order to be read. They're written in order to be translated into a different form. And this fact is something that needs to inform the writing itself. Okay, so let's move on to the appearance of the writing. And this is a page from the movie Arrival, written by Eric Heiserer. And as you can see immediately, there's a lot of white space, there's a fair amount of indentation going on. The words are capitalized to denote that it's either a sound effect, prop, or character introduction in general. All the dialogue is indented so the actors can immediately see what they need to focus on. And these slug lines, which are kind of hard to see here, they're on their own line and in all caps, so it's clear what scene this is, where and when this takes place, all of which might be important for scheduling and logistics. So all of this information gets conveyed to all the different people across the production, and the main takeaway here is that the way words appear on the page is just as important as what the words are saying. So us developers, we already know this, right? Just like with screenwriters, we know how important this is, and we call it readable code. We have our own rules of indentation, capitalization, line breaks, the whole shebang. But we are not limited to just that. We also have another extremely powerful, very non-controversial tool at our disposal to help explain ourselves, which is comments. The right comment at the right time can be so helpful and so powerful at communicating developer intent and thought process. It's just a really incredible way at conveying what you're trying to say as a coder. We don't have to just rely on writing readable code, which is super important, but sometimes that's not enough. And instead of scribbling along the margins like a screenwriter, us developers can just leave a comment at the exact point at which we're talking about in order to help explain what's going on or give some much needed context. Comments, and I think the coolest thing about comments is that they come built into the grammar, to the very language of programming itself. We don't have to use a package or something to start using comments. It's really cool. So super quickly, let me give an example. So recently I had to work with the JavaScript Google Maps API, something that I'd never done before. And luckily, one of my coworkers a long time ago had to do something similar on a different page of the same web app. So of course, I went over to look at his code and was greeted with this. So here, the comments are explaining what each block of code is doing rather than each line. The lines of code themselves are actually pretty easy to read. So having comments that are about bundles of code makes it a lot easier to actually understand what's going on in the document overall. So shout out to my coworker, Adam, for leaving such good comments. So what's the takeaway from this? Write comments, write good comments, write comments about code blocks rather than lines, write readable comments, probably a combination of all of those. But let's zoom out a little further. So web development, just like with film production, is an act of creation. And like all creative endeavors, it's extremely collaborative. People across disciplines and departments have to talk with each other in order to make something great. Just like with how a screenplay is meant for a lot of different people to read, your code is going to be read by more than just you. We've all looked at Git Lens or Git Blame, and very rarely do I not see someone else's name popping up on there. There's a history to the code that we work, and sometimes there's a very deep history there. So when we're working as developers, all we've got is just us and the computer. I feel like coding, just like writing, is a very intimate act because it's just you, the code editor, and your thoughts, and you somehow have to put those down on paper in a way that makes sense. It's very easy to develop tunnel vision and start making a lot of assumptions about your own code and your own writing. So never forget that you're not in this alone. Be mindful of the fact that you never have been, and draw strength from the fact that you never will be. Thank you so much.